and welcome to Hightailing Through History, a history podcast where two sisters get high and surprise each other with a story from history. I'm Laurel, your older sister.
Joined by Katie, the younger sister, because I'm the only other option, because there's only two.
There's only two, so it's a 50-50 chance. Welcome into episode 85 in season 3. We only have a couple more episodes left before we wrap up our season and, have a little summer break. Here we are. I got my tank top on to celebrate summer.
She's ready.
Shoulders out. Hit them with them shoulders. Katie, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good. Hanging in there. Hanging out. Got the gremlin around here somewhere. Oh, digging in a box. What's the other animal? Oh, Dirtly. Turtle. The turtle.
So what have you got going on tonight? What's your...
Half an edible.
What you doing?
And then I have some passion fruit sherbet. It's really sour, though. But it's really good. Out of my Green Dragon mug.
Did you buy that at the store?
Yeah. Yeah. Lily Koi is the Hawaiian name for passion fruit. It's not in the stores right now. It is out of season.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like you're having a really lovely tropical summery experience over there. And I think that's really beautiful. And I'm loving that for you, as the kids
Thank
say.
you.
Yeah. I really am excited about your journey that you're on. I'm going to say I'm excited about my own journey that I'm on. I had a little smoke through the pipe. It went in, it came back out again. There it is.
Fucking A, dude. Lord of the fucking Rings in theaters in the extended edition. Let me tell you what.
Back to back in the theater? Like you're just there?
No. You're hardcore. I would have done it, but no. I went Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So Return of the King was, because that's 4 hours and 8 minutes long, I think, when it's the extended edition, which is still not long enough. 6 hours and 8 minutes is more of what I'm talking about.
My ass is numb just thinking about that. Because I don't like to get up at a movie theater. Like I will,
nope.
I will not move.
Yep.
I will actually purposely not get anything to drink because I'm like, I don't want to pee at any point.
Yeah,
so I'm
you have to dehydrate.
I will dehydrate. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'll just watch it. I don't want to move. I don't want to nothing.
Yeah. You want to talk about hyper focus at its finest? I'll have all the snacks, all of that and everything, and I still won't move. Like, whatever's happening is happening. We're stuck here.
Just like a little sea otter.
Yeah, like a little sea. Actually, that's a very accurate description. But let me tell you what.
Chin is into the rest of your body and you're just sea otter.
Oh, yeah. My chin. Look at this. This chin that I have disappears.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes 5.
Oh, that is the biggest nerd fest. That's fun, though. Oh, I bet that's been so much fun.
It was a gathering of like-minded people.
One might say it's a fellowship of people there.
Oh my God, they might. I did also hoop and holler and go, what a man! Woo! When Aragorn
pushes the doors open?
Whoa, yeah. Whatever. I'm not even going to apologize. What?
And the rain, is like slow motion. Just
oh my God.
I don't match that.
That's okay. I mean, Blake's first and true and only love is Gimli, so here we are. He's obsessed with Gimli. He's like, but do you see this beast? I was like, I know you love Gimli. He loves dwarves. Remember the time he was attempting to compliment me and decimated any level of self-confidence I have about myself that I might even be remotely attractive to anyone? When he said, you're stout, baby, like a dwarf. I was like, I'll just go lay down in front of traffic now. That's fine.
Oh, no.
I know.
Some of the dwarves were sexy, though.
Oh, right? Feely and Keely. Thorin. Yeah. Oh, Thorin Oaken, my shield. Listen, let me tell you what. Listen, Richard. I don't know. It just came out of my mouth. You have to understand with, my, brain conditions, dude. Understand that when things come out of my mouth, you and I are experiencing them at the first time together. So don't add. It didn't stop. When it started here, it immediately took an exit ramp to here. It did not stop for a check-in at customs. No, that's not how this works. As I say things, our eyes meet, and true sheer panic starts to set in. We're experiencing it at the same time together. Okay, it just happens that way. I can't help it.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know what that means, but it meant something.
He could feely my Keely.
Oh,
What?
sure, dude.
Oak in my shield, king under my mountain.
What?
What?
He
What
could be the
even,
king
like,
under my mountain. Let me tell you what.
God. All right.
Yeah, Thorn's bottom, apparently. Anyway.
We got some history to get to.
We sure do.
You know, I'm really glad that you had an excellent time at the back-to-back days of the extended version of Lord of the Rings.
Thank you. Just in time. The Tolkien episode was just in time.
Right. Go back and listen to that. Was that two episodes ago? I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
All right. Who's going to go first? Here we go. A little bottle leaf grinder. Bottle leaf grinder. Shoot. I am the bottle. You are the grinder.
I got pounded.
Yes, you did. And here I go. All right. Exciting? Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Girls, what's my weakness? Men.
Oh, all I was hearing is pack it up, pack it in, lest we begin. That's where I was. Did we both just make old-ass 90s references?
Yep. So you know I love some dance history, some art history. Limber up. We're going to learn about the history of voguing. We are going to put a spotlight on the culture and the art of the ballroom scene, and we're going to celebrate some of its legends. So quick disclaimer, all right, just because I feel this is something that's like really important for me to say before we like death drop into its rich culture and history. So I'm white, I'm straight, I'm a cisgender woman in the Midwest. And so I'm going to be doing the best that I can to give you an idea of how big the culture is and really trying to do my best at centering Black and brown like folks that created it and their experience and their history with it, because it's something that's really been appropriated over time. Once it hit the mainstream, the real history of it, its real roots, they kind of get brushed aside into the margins. With that said, though, like I do understand the irony of like who is giving you this history, and so there's like that interpretation and like my lens of trying to retell this as best I can. But my 2 cents is you can hear a little bit from me, but then really go and look into reading the firsthand stories. It's kind of like an oral tradition with this, really. The queer folks, but queer folks of color, especially the ones who were like living it, creating it. And so the following is also a history that being, as I said, a lot of it is orally passed down. Like there's a lot of
interpretation,
different interpretations. Yeah, there's not really like a definitive history, because sometimes they'll say, sure, like, this is what's happened and this is what's happened. And then you're also getting that history from marginalized communities where it's not really recorded as well sometimes. So that being said, here we go. Let's vogue. Voguing it's earlier than RuPaul. It's earlier than Madonna's hit 1990s song, Vogue, and well before its mainstream, which really kind of hit in the early 90s. It was rooted in 19th century Black queer culture. And in drag itself has been around for centuries. A lot of people that they like to give the examples of Shakespeare, women were not allowed to be on stage and perform professionally. So women's roles were played by men. And then also when you're looking out to East Asia, Chinese opera and kabuki theater in Japan, so it's not new, right? I mean, this is not a new thing.
And here I thought going into this, I was not going to have a clue or anything to like, and then you're talking about this. I was like, actually, I know this stuff. I'm more well-versed than I give myself credit for.
Yeah, no, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, I've heard that, or I know of that. And so I think there's going to be some things where some parts of this history are familiar to you. So to talk about voguing means that we need to go back before its birth, like back quite a bit, to talk about the environment which allowed for its creation. The Emancipation Proclamation was issued by President Lincoln on January 1st, 1863. But before that, there was the D.C. Compensated Emancipation Act of 1862, which ended slavery within the nation's capital and freed over 3,000 enslaved people. And in the course of 10 years, so from 1860 to 1870, tripled the city's Black population from 14,136 to 43,404 people. So DC booms. and its population triples after this Emancipation Act for the capital, which I feel like an idiot. I didn't know that. Did you ever?
I did not know that either.
Washington, D.C. became a Black political, cultural, intellectual hub. And not only that, but D.C. Has always been a very gay city for a long time, very gay, but secretly gay.
That's what I was told about Chicago. I said that.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it was a very gay city. I mean, just a larger community that was there, really, but it secretly so because it was not legal to be gay. And also, if you worked in the government, it was another added layer of like, you have to be careful, don't get found out, when we look at the 1950s, we talked about the Lavender Scare in an episode, where that was being used as like a blackmail and life ruining aspect against somebody who was working in the government if they happened to be gay. And one of the many formerly enslaved individuals that came to the city in 1880 was named William Dorsey Swan. He worked within the Capitol and began to immerse himself in the underground queer scene. Although the networks were divided into Black and white communities and they rarely intersected, the drag scene is the exception. And Swan began to host drag balls where his guests would wear women's or men's traditional clothing and then would just dance and live their life and mingle. Sounds like a great time. Sometimes at these balls, there was even a competitive element with dance, with a contest that was called the cakewalk. So we do have these sayings, it's a piece of cake, or this task or whatever is a cakewalk, meaning that it's easy, it's a breeze. The cakewalk was something from pre-Civil War days in which Black enslaved participants would couple up and they'd do this little fancy pants dance, and they'd have their top hats and they do some high kicks, and there was a very sort of prim and proper series of complex moves that they would do. And really what it was is that they were just making fun of their white enslavers and being like, you're so fancy pants kind of thing. And the enslavers would judge it and be like, wow, this is great. Oh, wow, like, look at your moves. And then they would give cake, this like big fancy cake, to the winners.
That is the most Marie Antoinette shit I've ever heard, number one. Number two, good on them for at least, like, making a game of it for themselves, because, I mean, you got to rebel in some fashion.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it was. And so even, like, despite it being a part of, pre-Civil War days and the enslavement that was attached to that, like when you reclaim something, like people are like, I'm going to reclaim words and things like that. It was like that. They're like, this is our thing. We're going to keep this going. So the cakewalk would be something that would be a part of these drag balls, around the same time of these balls. DC also had these Emancipation Day parades. That was every year in April to celebrate that 1962 Emancipation Day in the city. And Queens of Freedom would be chosen. Each neighborhood was represented by a Black woman who personified freedom, and they would ride in this big white parade float wagon kind of thing with flowers on it. Now, William Dorsey Swan saw these queens looking beautiful, riding in the parade, freedom personified, and he was inspired. So in his balls, he began crowning the winners of the dance competition as the queen of the ball. And then he also adopted the title for himself. So William Dorsey Swan is credited as being the first, quote unquote, self-stylized drag queen in America.
I was going to say, I know his name, but I couldn't tell you why I know his name.
And that's him. Now, as I mentioned earlier, DC, gay, but secret gay, and to attend these balls in and of themselves is very dangerous. And the risk was that you could very easily be raided by the police.
Yeah.
But most times, like any other party that gets raided in history, the majority of the people can escape, like it's like the 5 hour here, scatter, right?
Yeah. That's the call.
So quite a few people were able to escape, but but when these raids would happen, William Dorsey Swan would meet the police at the door to try and like slow them down at least. And so more people could escape. But those who were caught would have their names printed in the paper. So not only would you face legal repercussions, which were usually about like 3 to 10 month jail sentences, but then having your name printed in the paper associated with these balls, or just,
I actually think that would be worse.
This culture at all. Yeah, it would.
Because no one's going to want to deal with you.
You lose your job. You could lose your spouse or your family, face public ridicule, harassment, your actual physical safety and life could be on the line. And you certainly did not want to get caught. But Swan, he was caught again because he's going to the doors at these events to slow everything down. So he's caught, and at one point he's sentenced to 300 days in prison. And after serving 3 months of the sentence that he pled not guilty to, Swan filed a petition directly to President Grover Cleveland in order to be pardoned. The petition had the support of 30 others, but was ultimately denied. But it is one of the earliest examples that we have in American history of queer activism, where like people were banding together and took specific steps to defend queer rights. So William Dorsey Swan's got some firsts when it comes to LGBTQ history. And as I said, he was gone down in history as America's first self-styled drag queen. And his balls continued in Washington, D.C. Even after his own death, his younger brother, Daniel, picked up the torch and kept going until his own passing in 1954.
Wow. So, that's almost 100 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was pre-Civil War, you said.
He came to Washington, D.C. in 1880. So, but he was enslaved beforehand. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, his brother Daniel's much younger. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about William Dorsey Swan in the early days of drag and drag balls and dance competitions at these drag balls. But there are records of these drag balls happening even earlier. Okay. Got the 1880s, 1890s sort of time, right? With William Dorsey Swan. Rewind. 1869. Only 4 years after the end of the American Civil War. Hamilton Lodge number 710 in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. Earlier still than William Dorsey Swan's balls, there was a masquerade charity gala where both men and women dressed in the traditional clothing of the opposite sex. And it was a hit. It was a hit. And Hamilton Lodge began regularly hosting drag events, which were seen as a safe place where LGBTQ identities could not only be free to be themselves, but could be seen and celebrated. Like William Dorsey Swan's drag balls, there was also a competition element with awards like the most perfect feminine body displayed by an impersonator. And it's the competitive spirit at these parties in Harlem that some decades later, Vogue really starts to take shape, voguing. Early 20th century, the Harlem Renaissance is renaissancing, baby. And this is a moment in history that we've touched on in a few other episodes. I think.
I was going to say, dude, I know a podcast that did a episode about that.
Yeah. Bessie Coleman, Josephine Baker, History of Jazz. I think we've talked about it a little bit. But if you are unfamiliar, it was this a cultural and intellectual revival in Harlem, the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. It's a revival of African-American dance, music, literature, fashion, theater, art, scholarship, also like in politics. So intellectual, cultural, art. I mean, everything is
it's
booming.
A renaissance in the
truest
form of the word.
Absolutely. And it was massively important in helping create Black identity, or I guess in the case of like post-American Civil War, like quote unquote, like new Black identity of like, like this is really who we are, and this is really what we can bring to the world, instead of like all the hurt and the memories of enslavement, right? So it's really like this incredibly important cultural turning point, and it's right there in the Harlem neighborhood. And as this revival is jumping, it's creating space for Black and Latin LGBTQ plus folk to come out and create a conversation about gender and sexuality and play this all out in these drag balls, which brought the people in by the 1920s. And it was not just the drag performers and the queens that were attending these events. It was the straights as well. It was the people that were like, hey, this is a cool scene.
It's
like,
just
I
a
dig
good
it.
time.
Yeah,
it's
I dig
such
this.
a place of, I think it's rare to find an event where I'm going to do my best to, my edible's starting to kick in, so just bear with me.
These are moments, right? I understand.
Yeah, it's hard to find a space where societal standards and cultural standards are not there. It's really a place free of a lot of judgment, and actually finding a real space like that is very, very rare, where it just is a judgment-free zone where people of all different backgrounds come and be peacefully and jovially in the same space. So it's pretty special. It's fucking magical is what I'm trying to tell you. And it's Narnia. And if you haven't had a chance to, it's just a sheer freedom of expression without fear of judgment. And it's magical and it's happy. And it just, you can't help but smile and laugh and giggle. And it's just, if you haven't experienced it, you need to. Put that out there. Sorry, I went on a little monologue, but it was important then.
The passion was there. No, it's good. And you're right. It is. It's a melting pot. And that was exactly the case here at the Hamilton Lodge. It's also multiracial. And that is a much more important thing to note, because Hamilton Lodge's first drag ball and competition back in 1869, all the way through the 1936. So it's another 69 years later, mind you, that's all this time has passed. The judges favored more Eurocentric white features and would often then pick white performers and white drag queens. And it wasn't until 1936, in front of an audience of 8,000 people, so this is how big these drag balls got, that a Black contestant finally won the first prize.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And this is in Harlem, right? Harlem has historically always been a higher Black population, right? It's a Black neighborhood. That's where.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I was really surprised at that being the case. I was like, oh my gosh, 69 years still. Anyway.
When you say that, I think of that whole psychology study they did where they told the kids to pick, I know this is a today's study, but think about how different today's attitudes are towards races versus the 1800s attitudes towards races, right? Like very different. I would say today is probably more accepting, right? But remember how the Black kids always picked the white baby doll because it was how they, their lens of beauty. Imagine what it would have been back in the day. I guess that doesn't surprise me, because even at the time, because of that whole white is better, that whole like, yes, white supremacy, but white is more beautiful, white is more successful, white is, everything is better, that even at a subconscious level, they would pick that. I guess it just doesn't surprise me. I'm like, yeah, well, that makes sense when you think about it.
No, thank you for bringing that up, because you're right. That's essentially what's happening here. And in the years that followed, that sort of racial bias can be found in other balls across cities in the country. So it wasn't just happening in New York. This was happening as drag balls spread out across the country. And that was kind of the same thing across the board. But things changed for these drag balls in the late 1960s, Harlem. And for such a long time, performers would try to emulate the looks of a white woman, like lightening their skin with makeup or powder, straightening their hair or contouring facial features to like look more white or Eurocentric. They got to the point where Queen Crystal LeBeja and all the other Black and Latin queens, they lose to a white contestant again. And LeBeja is like, nah, I'm done with this. Enough is enough. This has like been happening at all the balls and it sucks. And we don't want to participate in this anymore. So she's out. She's like, I'm done. She's still doing drag balls, but she doesn't, or she's like still participates in like the drag scene and also like the ball scene, but she's not going to these pageants anymore. And she's like, the Black and Latin folks need a place to do their thing. So all through the 50s and 60s, just to think about our historical tapestry, as I like to say, the 50s and 60s in America, we have the civil rights movement going on, right? at the end of the 60s, there's hippies and counterculture and summer of love, down with the Vietnam War. All this is going on, right? And then in 1969, we have a watershed moment in LGBTQ history, the Stonewall Uprising happening in New York.
In what year?
1969.
Never gonna let it go. That's beautiful. Okay. Thank you.
Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. So same time, late 60s into the early 70s, y'all got rickrolled. And you're gonna get vogued and rickrolled. There we are. Late 60s into the 70s, there's the Black Power movement, so the Black Panthers. And something I spoke on in that Stonewall episode a couple of years back is that even within the gay and queer community, it was still white centered. So it was mostly like white gay men who were leading change and policy for the LGBTQ community, but not bringing everybody into the table. So trans and non-binary folks were excluded, particularly people of color, and so it's almost like another ceiling to have to like break through, which is why Stonewall Uprising is such a big moment. I mean, there are many big moments in LGBTQ history, but that's the big one I think a lot of people will point to.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is important to note the background of the birth of Vogue, and these drag balls, and something to keep in mind that it was really owned within that community and created and cultivated there.
How extremely ironic that this subculture struggled with its own race identity problems. And then, I mean, fast forward to today, I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at my RuPaul's Monopoly. Who is the face of drag?
Yeah.
It's Ru. It's a Black person. Like, how different. I mean, that's a good thing, you know? Listen.
Right, yeah.
I don't think it was easy to get there. So, but it's just kind of cool to see it where it is now.
Yeah. Crystal LeBeja, back to her. Her friend and fellow Harlem queen, Lottie LeBeja, I love it, like sisters here. They start their own drag ball with Crystal being named the mother, I love this, the mother of the House of LeBeja. And it becomes known, like this new drag ball becomes known as House Ballroom. And immediately it's a safe space. Yes. I'm in the house of, House of Dupree, House of Omni, House of Chanel, right?
House of Method, Crystal Method.
Oh, very nice.
Check it out.
Okay. But it's immediately a safe space, specifically for Black and Latin gay, queer, and trans folks. And the houses, as they were known, were like teams, but like better. Like, this is our team, this is our clique, this is our friend group.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit better because they were more like family.
Yeah. It's so that exists today. 1,100%. But yeah, it's a lot like family is a better way to put it. Imagine getting sent off to boarding school because your family doesn't want you because you're gay. And then you find this group of people who's like, we'll take you in, we'll help feed you, clothe you, teach you. You like drag? We'll show you drag. Like, we're just here to take care of you and make sure nothing bad happens to you, that you eat at night, you get home safe, you have a safe place to sleep at night. You know what a family does, is supposed to do. That's what they are. They are, yes.
Yep.
It is your new family.
Katie took that nail and her hammer and she's like, tink, 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 right on the head. It was a very deep kinship. It was your family. A lot of these, especially like the young adults and the teens, were getting kicked out of their biological families. They were without homes and places to go. Once again, something that we talked about in the Stonewall episode too. So this was still happens today. And so the house became your family, and you had a mother and your father at the head of each house, and they took care of you, and everyone took care of each other and like taught each other drag and like how to, just gave you a safe place to like be you.
Yeah. And then generally each house had kind of like a thing, like this house did a certain eyebrow. Like Anitra is one of my favorite queens, she has a thing where she just leaves it like through, like there's a scar there.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's just how she does hers. But each house has something, particular about it that you would be like, oh, I see, you're from House of Method or House of Heidi in Closet or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Then this is actually the same case then at this time too. So I love that you mentioned that. In the early 70s, Crystal and Lottie, they announced their first house ball and they call it House of La Beja Ball. Love it. And people were inspired. They're like, ooh, House of La Beja. Like, that's cool. That's a cool thing that you're doing. And then other prominent names in the drag ball scene created their own houses.
That's the bougiest shit ever.
Isn't that so fun? So Dior, Chanel, Dupree, Plenty, like there's a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And the houses grew, and then so did the balls and the frequency of them. And that competition element still continued on. And categories were once face, like who has the best face, body, who has the most like, sort of feminine body or certain criteria that they're looking for in this particular competition, body. It was just face, body, right? But they grew at this point that the houses spring up here in the like throughout the 70s, but particularly going into the 80s, right? This is where the categories expand. Now, the following is a quote from an article I read called A History of Drag Balls, Houses, and the Culture of Voguing by Tim Lawrence. Quote, then in the early 1980s, we separated the categories out. So there was a category called Butch Realness and another called Model Effect and another called Face. And then we created all these other categories like Executive Realness, which I'm going to get to that one in a minute, which is really interesting.
These are all runway options that have all been on RuPaul's Drag Race. It's so funny.
Town and country, ethnic, and then they continue to develop through the 80s. Other categories,
serving plastic bag realness.
Yeah. Other categories included best woman, best man, punk versus future, shopping through famous avenues, so like Rodeo and Fifth Avenue, like love it. Performance, leather versus suede, executive high fashion, and Hollywood evening wear.
Oh yeah.
I am so excited about all these. They're so cool. So end quote there.
Creativity was not short in these places.
Oh no. And I love the creativity. I think that's probably what I really love about it is just the creativity of creating your identity and your moves and your presentation and your makeup and your realness of these different categories is great. I even read that at one house ball, there was a Riker Island versus Sing Sing realness category. And I actually laughed out loud in my little boy's gymnastics class. I was like, are you kidding me? What is that? They're both very famous prisons in New York, Riker Island and Sing Sing. But
well, and one of them's like for pedophiles, isn't it? Rikers Island is for like sex predators?
It might be. That was a place where a lot of gay, queer, trans folks were arrested and sent to.
That's not good.
Because like cross-dressing, quote unquote, was an offense, so that was
okay. There's a big difference between being a man in a dress and being someone who touches children. We'll put that out there. They're not the same. There's a very big difference.
Say it a little louder for the people in the back who don't
There's a difference between a man in a dress and somebody who touches kids. Laura's like, you're high, sit down.
At the House of Ninja Ball, that executive realness category is first introduced, and you were judged on, this is the 80s, right? Early 80s, and you were judged on your executive yuppie corporate image, which is really cool because we were just talking about like creating your identity and stuff. And so for a lot of these people who were a part of the ballroom scene, getting a job on Wall Street wasn't something
an option.
It wasn't really not right. There was
it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to hire you.
Yeah. In these competitions, or at least within this category, executive realness, you could look at the part and serve your looks hot and fresh. I don't know. I'm not
be that character for a day.
But be that character and say, I could be an executive. I can look the part. I can, and it was, again, it's like that reclaiming of power to be like, hey, we can look the part. We can be anyone that we want to be.
Yeah.
So I'm really loving the categories, and like, they're fun. Yes. But there's like a real importance to them too.
Yeah. There's a reclamation of spaces where it shouldn't matter if you're queer, but it was made illegal, and here you are reclaiming that space that shouldn't have been unavailable to you in the first place. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, each house had their own thing. Like, they might have their own look, but in the case of the ballroom scene, the ballroom culture, they had their thing that they were really good at. So Willie Ninja, who was the mother of the House of Ninja, they were known for their dancers.
Okay.
House of Extravaganza, which was the first Latin house, was known for their face. They had the face, right? Woven through all of this is the drag queen art,
by the way.
The herstory, yeah.
Yes.
This art of throwing shade. So that's where throwing shade comes from.
The library is open. And reading is what? Fundamental. Anyway.
Yes. Reading and throwing shade, all of this is part of it, where you're subtly insulting another queen and like just kind of talking a little bit of smack and game back and forth at each other. So voguing itself, I know, like, we're getting here now. It was born out of the dance competition aspect way back in the 19th century, sure. But really, like, in the newer late 20th century part of throwing shade. So throwing shade was like a way that, voguing was a way that you could like dance battle basically after, and like throw shade, but like through your movement. And there's a few stories of how voguing was born. So here we go. One of them is, which I like this one. I'm not saying it's any more right or anything like that. This is the one that like made me smile real big when I was reading it. Paris Dupree is the name that sometimes gets credited with creating voguing. And Dupree, whose balls were called Paris is Burning, hence the name of the famous documentary, the same name, that came out in 1981. It's said that Dupree and a few other Black queens were throwing shade at each other. And then while dancing, Paris had a Vogue magazine in their bag, and they pull it out, and he opens a page to like where a model's like striking a pose. And on the beat of the song, they hit it like that, and then like steps in front of the other queen that they were throwing shade at. And then that queen then was like, oh, okay, steps out in front and then hits another pose. And then like, and then they start kind of like, it's like the cover, like the edges of the magazine, and they're just hitting it on the beat. There they go, back and forth, just the coolest dance battle back and forth. So that's one story.
That's definitely the real story. But anyway,
it's a fun one. Another origin story is that it was created within Riker Island, within the trans women and queer men that were being locked up there, as I mentioned, and that was a form of like it's space reclamation, but also like a form of protest as well too. Is that was something that was starting to be done at Riker Island. A third says Willie Ninja, who is often called the godfather of voguing. Willie Ninja, with their dance moves, brings a Asian influence, like a lot of martial arts, hence the last name Ninja. So more angular movements, and like arm extension and sharp, kind of Bruce Lee-esque, who's kind of using martial arts and like movements of martial artists. And Ninja did go on to become a dancer, choreographer, became famous in their own right. Ninja's really fun thing. This is like part of like what I really love about the story. So in the Paris is Burning documentary, which I didn't use as a source, I just watched a couple of clips of it. But Willie Ninja, their thing was to use the hand as a makeup compact. And so they'd be hitting their moves, boom, getting it, go, and then boom, break out the makeup compact, and then would like do their makeup and like, do like lipstick, and then reflect the makeup compact onto the competition, and then would start like Vogue doing their makeup too. Like, oh girl, you need some of this. Like you need to you need to fix that face and like look better because you look a mess. Like that was the shade, right? Oh, so good. I love that. I love that story.
Who taught you how to beat a face? That face is beat to death, girl. Get back to the drawing board.
Other influences to the movements were Egyptian hieroglyphics there, like breaking, aka like breakdancing, but breaking is the proper and official name of it, which, by the way, this summer's Olympics, Paris 2024, breaking is going to be an official sport. Just this one time only. It's its first and probably its last appearance at the Olympics, and I am so excited about it. So breaking, watch it. Also, roots in Black and brown culture in New York and dance, right?
Like break dancing?
Break dancing. It's called breaking.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but remember, I was born in the 1900s. If you call it breakdancing, I'll know what you're talking about. So.
But then also like contortion too, like, right? You can like twist and like,
Oh man, I wish I could dance like that. They're so talented. They've got such good rhythm, and I'm just a potato who likes Lord of the Rings.
It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And with voguing and really just like ballroom culture overall, there were so many factors at play. Race, sexuality, gender identity and fluidity, class, politics. In the 60s and into the 70s, we had these upheavals in the norm, quote unquote, of sexuality and race with like civil rights and then the sexual revolution. So we're seeing big changes happening in these decades. And the bricks that were thrown at Stonewall, creating the ripples of pride and like Pride Fest, Pride Month, Pride parades. In the 80s, particularly in 80s New York City, it's terrifying. Like 80s New York City is scary. The crime is bad. Gang violence is really high. Economic reforms during the 80s, during the Reagan administration, it led to a lot of really big cuts in social programs.
Yeah.
And so there's the poor is getting poorer, rich is getting richer. Like there are a lot of problems. It's scary enough as it is. And then so violence is high against anybody, but it's disproportionately higher against the LGBTQ plus community. And then this huge topic, not only within that same community, but then like the mainstream and like the larger population, is HIV and AIDS. So many people within the ballroom scene and in the LGBTQ community as a whole were infected with this horrible disease, and many of them were dying. So it's AIDS, it's general health and wellness and safety, but it's race, it's class, it's gender, it's sexuality. It's all part of the ballroom culture, and you can't pick any one of these things out and exclude it, really. But also, and more importantly, or maybe equally as important, but it's queer joy, it's family, it's beauty and dance and love and ownership of yourself and your space and your identity, and creating a culture to share that with others, especially others like you. Voguing found its way into the mainstream with Madonna's 1990 classic Vogue. It's so funny. I actually noticed my besties up in the corner, Kelly and Alicia. Hey girls, what's up? Alicia sent a text message in our thread that said, Vogue just came on the radio, and I was thinking of you guys. And I came up like 5 minutes ago, and I was
Get the fuck out now. That's insane.
Greta Garbo, Monroe, Detroit. Yes. Oh, I love it. The following year, 1991, the documentary. Sorry, that was really weird. You know how you say a word sometimes and you're like, that doesn't sound like the word that I was, but it wasn't far off. Anyway, the documentary Paris is Burning was about the ballroom scene in 1991. Then in the early 90s, RuPaul told us, you better work, supermodel. And now there's RuPaul's Drag Race. And new styles of voguing popped up over the last couple of decades since then. and it's embraced around the world. It has a culture. It's mainstream. Like people watch it on TV. And Pose, I think, is another more recent TV show that's come out. Is that Showtime or Max? I think it's Pose is about the ballroom scene.
Oh, cool.
But there are those who are always at the heart of it. They're working really hard to make sure that its roots and its legendary creators are not brushed into the margins of history.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of appropriation of voguing in the ballroom culture in general. But I just wanted to talk about the history. It's like real roots and how far back it goes too, which I think is amazing. Drag balls and ballroom culture and voguing, but centering the Black and Latin voice for that, because that's really where it all started. And I think it's so cool. So
how fitting that the face of drag is now a Black woman. There you go.
Yeah, I love that. And we want to continue that and listen to the stories of, I know, like I said, the irony of me being the one to tell you this, but hear a little bit of it here first, but then I hope that
reach out,
wets your whistle. You go listen to the voices who are really telling the story and living it and creating it. Voguing, drag balls, ballroom culture, Vogue. There it is. Why, hello there and salutations. I'm not sure why I went with that voice, like some sort of cheap knockoff of a Doc Holliday. But, sometimes I don't think these things through. I made the voice, I did it, I committed, and here we are. We are at the break in the history, right in between our two stories, and I hope you've been having a good time. We love having you here. We're so glad that you've joined us. And if you love what's been going on, please make sure that you're giving us a like, a review, a comment, subscribe, following, whatever it might be on the platform that you're listening or watching us on. It really helps get us boosted up in charts, helps get us seen by more history lovers like yourself. And it's really, really great to help our little tiny show grow. We are very, very soon going on to 3 years of hightailing through history. Our birthday will be July 16th, which from the day that this is released will be 3 weeks from the moment that I'm speaking right now. And holy moly, it's gone by so fast. We've had a lot of learning, had a lot of growing. We've had a lot of new friends and amazing opportunities to be able to connect with other people and grow our audience. And it's been so cool to meet some of you and talk to you and see where you're listening around the world. And we would love that to continue to grow. It really would mean the world to us. I mean, that would be just the best birthday present if you could give a little rating, a review. Please share it with a friend or post it on your social media so other people can listen and see the things that you're liking and that you're enjoying. If you really love what we're doing, we are now on Patreon. So we have what we call the Best Buds Club. And for a few bucks a month, just like the price of a coffee per month, you can help support our show and help us do the thing that we really love and help keep the proverbial lights on here at Hightailing Through History. Over there on Patreon, we have a free membership, so you can just be a part of the conversation and hang out with us. Or at different tiers, we have more behind-the-scenes content, guest interviews, extra content from our episodes, cooking videos, our half-baked episodes, which are little mini episodes that we do. That's patreon.com/hightailing through history. We are two sisters, high on history. Up next, Katie is going to be taking us around the world and also back through time. So we are going on quite a big adventure from where we just finished in 1980s New York. Katie's going to be sharing with us summer solstice practices and traditions from different cultures around the world through time. And so with that said, let's puff pass it on to part 2. All right, Katie, what do you got for us?
I think the only place our stories are going to intersect tonight is under joy and a safe space to gather.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's what we're about.
That's like the only thread I can really draw between them. And my dear listeners, that is because I am bringing you the history of the summer solstice. And also, don't be discouraged, dear audience from the Southern Hemisphere. I included you guys in it too, because we don't leave anybody out here at Hightailing Through History. And I love way too many Australians to forget them. So
they are also our number 2 country outside of the United States. Are they really? So we got to. Thanks, Australia.
No, but you don't know the joy that I didn't know that. Are you serious? Mm-hmm. I fucking love Australia. The summer solstice is the longest day of the year. and shortest night in the Northern Hemisphere. Important to note that. And it occurs between June 20th and June 22nd. It's going to be one of those years. It should be on your calendar. It should always tell you what, day that is. In the Southern Hemisphere, their summer solstice occurs December 20th or 22nd, between the 20th, 22nd, so anywhere within those 3 days, because they are the exact opposite of us in seasons. For those of you that didn't know, you probably did, but if you don't, or if you're like me and you knew it and you keep forgetting, there you go. There's your yearly reminder. When I look and I'm like, why aren't passion fruit in season? And Blake's like, it's their winter, dude. And I'm like, what? He goes, South America is in the Southern Hemisphere, winter. I was like, oh, that's the thing. I forgot. The summer solstice has been observed since, how long do you think we as mankind have been observing this? Because this, I shouldn't be surprised, but it still kind of blew my mind a little bit. My high little mind. I'm
thinking like we've got some millennia in there, right?
Probably the late Stone Age. So right around the Neolithic era. I almost said area. Maybe it was an area too. Era. Which, in case you wondered, because you don't know, because I didn't, Neolithic era occurred anywhere from 10,000 BCE to 22 BCE. So yes, millennia, my dear sister. A lot of millennia,
yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. That's a long fucking time to be writing. What's up? What?
Well, no, I just figured if I said millennia and in my head, I just thought like a minimum of like 5,000 years, I figure I would be like safe. But
I hit you with like 13,000 years. So you're fucking good.
Yeah, I had like just the barn door of like missing space that I could,
You did.
There's your target. There you go. Just millennia. There we go.
Broad. Nailed it.
It makes me sound somewhat smart if anyone's not really paying attention.
You're doing great.
If you're not really paying attention, you're like, oh, she knows things. I'm like, yeah, babe, I do.
I mean,
no, I just gave myself a massive target.
So in the Northern Hemisphere, the solstice receives more daylight than any other day of the year, which makes it the start of the astronomical, like, adjective, not like verb, like, what's the word? Exclamation, but the astronomical summer, which it might also be an astronomical summer, but.
Yeah, but also the stars. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So what this means is it's the tipping point in which the days start to become shorter. Sorry. By a couple minutes. So, which is so fucking sad, in my opinion. So Earth's axis is tilted about 23.5 degrees on the regular. So let's see if I can do this. I meant to bring a top, but I didn't. And some people listen instead of watch. So, if you're looking at like a top, like spinning, if it was slightly like tilted, like as it starts to do that big wavy thing before it's about to fall, that's kind of how Earth is rotating. But through the year, that wobble like that actually changes. So only 2 times of the year, Earth's axis is neither tilted away from or away from the sun. So like when you first spin the top where it's almost dead center, 2 times a year, Earth hits that point in its axis. I really hope my high ass is describing this in a way that everybody understands, because I'm doing my best. So when your little top just gets started spinning and it's like that, that results in an almost equal amount of daylight and darkness on all latitudes. Latitudes are fatitudes, which is the wide lines that go around the globe, not up and down. And those are known as the equinoxes. Okay, so these days where the axis is not tilted, those are equinoxes. Day and night are the same length. The solstice is when the Earth's tilt is at its maximum. So right before that top is going to topple over, being tilted towards the sun. So right now, up in the Northern Hemisphere, our tilt is towards the sun. So we're getting max fucking daylight, man. Max daylight, sunglasses. Also, it means that the sun is at its highest point in the sky. So when you'll like track the sun across the horizon to check what time of day it is, the sun's actually going to appear more towards the center of the sky versus like down on the horizon in the winter, where it kind of like rises and sets like that instead of like a big arc over us. So that was a lot of science to throw at you.
No, I loved it. Love some astrophysics science there. I feel like Neil deGrasse Tyson is in the room with us.
That's a bit generous. I have pink hair and a questionable, everything. But so So the word solstice comes from the Latin word sol, meaning, you guessed it, the sun. And, don't come for me, anybody who might speak Latin, stitium, meaning still or stopped. So the sun, it's stopping there, right? Because after that, it's going to start to recede back to its sleepy timeness, and it's going to go visit the southern hemisphere and bring joy and summer and warmth there. All of the science out. Now you know what the solstice is, how it happens, what puts it in the sky. And celebrating the summer solstice actually started with ancient cultures across the globe. We're spanning Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. So this isn't new, and it's almost universal, which is extra fucking interesting to me.
Oh, I love that.
In ancient Greece, the summer solstice marked the beginning of the new year. Okay, so their new year was at a different time, which I suppose makes sense, but it also marked the 1 month countdown to the opening of the Olympic Games. There it is. So that's our thread, Laurel, was the Olympic game reference. Boom. There it is. So the solstice also fell around the time of Cronia, which is not an STD. It's a festival. You could probably get an STD here, though, because there were probably orgies, but it depends on the festival. So a festival of celebrating Kronos, the god of agriculture. Cronus, not Kronos. Kronos ate Zeus. Cronus, N-U-S, is the god of not architecture, agriculture, holy cannabis. And listen, it's important to make that distinction. They're not the same. One's a big titan, ate everybody. One makes things grow. So the Greeks, back to the Greeks, their strict social code, because they did have slaves, it was temporarily turned on its head during Cronia, with slaves participating in merriment as equals or even being served by their masters. The ancient Romans celebrated the solstice with Vestilia, which is a religious festival honoring Vesta, the goddess of the hearth, which I thought somebody said was also Saturnella, but don't quote me on that. I don't think that. Saturnella. Oh, by the way,
Saturnalia. It's I just talked about something recently, and I
think it's a different.
It is a different.
Oh, yeah. It's winter solstice. That's why.
Winter solstice. There you go.
Vestalia. Yeah, that's how it's said. Is the summer solstice, and Saturn is the one for winter solstice. So there you go. Those are the difference. We're of course talking about summer right now. During Vestalia, married women could enter the temple of Vesta and leave the goddess offerings in exchange for blessings to their family. So I'm just gonna interject here a little bit. Probably everybody knows, but it said it's to the goddess of the hearth. That's extremely important because the women being the keepers of the hearth in the home, that's how food got put on the table. That's how the family was created, obviously through women, stuff like that. So this is a very important time of year. Yes, obviously fertility and orgies for all, but more importantly, how are we going to survive the winter? Are we going to have a good crop? Are our animals going to be healthy? Are we going to have enough to feed the animals? Are we going to have food to sustain us through the winter? Or are we going to be sickly and ill? So this is a super important time of year, right? That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's why that whole honoring the goddesses of the hearth and women being honored and bringing blessings to the families, a lot was centered around her being the inner wheel working of the house. So there you go. And there's Greek. It's all Greek to me. Fuck yeah. I love you. We are so related. So the Greeks and the Romans. And then here we go in ancient China. The summer solstice was also a time to honor earth and femininity. Again, there's no accident about that. It honors the feminine energy, the force known as yin. So we know yin and yang. Yang is the masculine, yin is the feminine. As I just said earlier, why the feminine is what we're looking at this time of year, because the fertility and the I don't want to say produce, but like the fertility of produce is a good thing too.
Yeah, you want
Resource
your
fertility.
food.
Yeah, as well as genital fertility. We
Yeah.
want resource fertility as well. We just want everyone to have fertility everywhere. I want fertility to rain down on me.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So this celebration in ancient China included various traditions and rituals, including a dragon boat race in Zhejiang, I believe is how it's said. And it still happens today. So if you look up the dragon boat race for summer solstice, you can see it. It still happens. Think about how fucking long that's been going on. That's impressive. Like, they have not stopped organizing that for thousands of years. That's insane.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even organize my sock drawer.
It was just recently too. I know that Google had a doodle for it.
Google did have a good doodle. Good looking out on that, Laurel. I was going to point that out.
I was like, what's going on up there in the corner of my screen? And I was like, because that looks really pretty and fun.
That's
and
awesome.
Like, it's the dragon boat.
So probably a lot of the listeners will have seen that.
21st, did it say?
Yes.
Okay.
Solstice.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Yep. Along with ancient China, over in the Americas, there were also tribes that took part in solstice rituals. Some of them are still practiced today. The Sioux, for instance, the Sioux Nation, performs a ceremonial sun dance around a tree while wearing colors associated with, you guessed it, the sun and fertility. No way.
Such a theme throughout this.
It is, dude. I feel like I'm getting the vibe, man, that like fertility is important here. Some scholars believe that Wyoming's Bighorn medicine wheel, which is an arrangement of stones built several hundred years ago by Plains tribes who would have been in the area at the time, it would have actually been a couple of them, not just one, and it aligns with the solstice, sunrise and sunset, and was the site of that culture's annual sun dance. So, a little further south in Central America, the Mayan and the Aztec, or the Mexica people, if you've seen that if you've heard that episode, they built temples and other buildings, such as the pyramids. I'm sure we've all heard of them. I think it's not a secret. You can find it on Google. To align precisely with the shadows cast by these astrological occurrences, which would be the summer and winter solstice. Because both are important, y'all. Before Christianity took hold on the European continent, Germanic, Celtic, and Slavic groups welcomed the solstice, better known as midsummer, with feasting and bonfires. It was thought that the bonfires would boost the sun's energy, right? Adding light to light, because it's that light and warmth that would make the crops grow, right? Brings the warmth to the earth and dries up all that water, because if you've had a lot of rain, you'll flood your crops and all that, so that doesn't help either. So it was thought that those bonfires would boost the sun's energy for the rest of the growing season and guarantee a good harvest, because if you don't have a good harvest, you're not fucking eating when it's cold out. Just point blank. You will die. So bonfires are also associated with magic, not with a K, just normal magic with a C. And it was believed that bonfires could banish demons and evil spirits and lead maidens to their future husbands. Which, that's a magic-ass fire. So magic was thought to be strongest during the summer solstice. So actually, that's a good point to bring up for certain cultures. So how Samhain, or Halloween, All Hallows Eve, is the veil is thinnest between the worlds. It's actually the same during summer solstice. So it's considered a very heavily magical day. And ours corresponded with a full moon this year, which is really interesting. So that was all kind of very interesting. And then, so there is a lot of cultures that at that time, because the veils are thin, you wanted to make sure you went and made offerings to the forest spirits, so like the fae and whatnot wouldn't steal you away and get lost, because they are said to mislead you and get you lost during the summer solstice, so you would die in the forest. So
yeah,
thought that was some interesting tidbits for you all.
The fae, oh man,
you gotta watch out.
Dangerous, yeah.
So maybe go in, well, again, make your offerings. If this is something that you partake in, make your offerings and wear a mask. Wearing a mask, that's why you wear them on Halloween, to protect yourself so the fae don't know who you are. That and the wild hunt, when you run through the forest for Odin's wild hunt as they travel across the night sky. This is in earlier December. For certain cultures, you want to wear a mask because, again, they'll grab you and take you with them. So, which might be preferable. I mean, it depends. What kind of a party are we going to? I gotta tell you. Like, will there be libations? Because I could be convinced. And do I get a pony? Not to eat, to ride. Please don't feed me the pony. I'll be really sad.
No, or make inkwells out of hooves. Don't do that either.
Yeah, don't make inkwells out of hooves. Apparently that's super popular, which is not my thing. So midsummer was also a crucial time of year for the Scandinavian people also lesser known during the Viking Age. They would meet to discuss legal matters and resolve disputes around the summer solstice. So it was kind of a time of the year where I thought it was both solstices really, where like a lot of different tribes, right, and clans would all come and meet together. Some cultures, it says groups of people, but I'm going to say cultures because that feels more correct, in which couples would jump through flames together during the midsummer to predict how high this year's crops would grow, which we should bring that back. Why not? Where is life without a little bit of risk and a little bit of fire hazard? So, according to pagan folklore, evil spirits would appear on the summer solstice, is what we were talking about. To ward off evil spirits, people would wear protective garlands of herbs and flowers. So, flower crowns, herbs around your neck, like a lei, but like a Viking-style lei with juniper and rosemary on it.
I'm really loving all of this. This sounds so sexy. And like Midsummer Night's Dream, very Shakespeare.
Do you know that's one of the few I haven't read by him?
Well, there you go.
Obviously, I'll need to. So one of the most powerful plants was known as chase devil. Today it's called St. John's wort because of its association with St. John's Day, because when Christianization occurred, it became St. John's Day. So, there you go. Incidentally, fun fact, Laurel, St. John's wort will, if you are taking any form of hormonal birth control, will stop it from working. It makes it ineffective. Oh, you knew that. Okay, good. I always say that so people know, just in case. I don't want any nasty...
It's good to mention because, yeah, it does have some...
Well, because it's given as an antidepressant, which if you are using hormonal birth control, not as like an acne medicine, but as a form of birth control, I just wanted you to know that if you take stuff as like a tea or anything, because they have it, it's called Happy Tea, because it is a mood booster, by the way. It does work. However, consult a doctor before any and all use, and watch out for your birth control.
Sure.
Other summer solstice traditions hold that the ashes of a midsummer bonfire could protect one from misfortune, or that the ashes, when spread across one's garden, would bring a bountiful harvest. Sun, energy, sun, bonfire. Sun equals good, harvest. Sun, bonfire, ashes, harvest. Equals out to me. A plus B, Y equals MX plus B. There it is. On from being a fertile myrtle, the orientation of some archaeological structures are thought to reflect ancient observations of the summer solstice. So, from the view of the Sphinx, standing from the Sphinx at your back, the sun sits squarely, not roundly, but squarely, between the Great Pyramids, Khufu and Khafre, on Egypt's Giza Plateau on the summer solstice. Right there. Bam. Archaeologists have long debated the purposes and uses of, you guessed it, Stonehenge. You knew it was coming. The Neolithic megalith, as they call it, so it's a big-ass fucking monument, in the south of England, which I've never seen. The site is aligned... Don't give it that kind of a look, dude. I'd be sitting all over those rocks. I'd be like, what? You can't touch the rock?
No.
Well, other people were allowed to fucking pour paint on them. I just want to touch the rock.
Yeah, well, you can touch it with your eyes.
See about that. Katie just like, beep. Just a gentle finger brush. That's all I want in life. So the Stonehenge site is aligned with the direction of the sunrise on the summer solstice. While some have theorized that Stonehenge was a location of prehistoric summer solstice rituals, maybe. There's not a lot of archaeological evidence that backs that up. But point blank, there's not a lot of archaeological evidence that talks about what it is anyway, so good fucking luck figuring out what it is. It just kind of is. So the stones near Amesbury at Stonehenge in Wiltshire Oh yeah, nailed it.
Nice.
They were set up in about 2500 BCE when they were carefully designed to align with the movements of the sun, at least probably. I mean, why would it link up otherwise? Also, like, they did not skip leg day. Whoever put that together, just gonna put that out there. Standing in the center of the monument at summer solstice, the sun rises just to the left of a large standing stone outside of the stone circle known as the heel stone. Heel like Heel, as in the heel of your foot. And it's seen through the gap of the outer Sarzin circle. So there's two circles. It is likely that people probably gathered at Stonehenge at both midsummer and midwinter. As I said, these were big deals. The bountiful harvest for midsummer, but the days are getting shorter. Midwinter, we're finally getting that there is an episode I did on the winter solstice, by the way, for those who want to know. It's when the sun is coming back, so you'll have fertility, warmth, and all that return back to the earth is the winter solstice. So, it's likely they gathered at both solstices to conduct rituals and ceremonies relating to the changing seasons in the sun and in the sky. It must have been important to align their monument with the movements of the sun, but again, we're never going to actually know. Unless a time machine gets made, which doubtful, but I would love to be proven wrong. So there you go. Many ancient summer solstice rituals, and they still take place today. So this is actually not a new thing. There's plenty of cultures that actually still observe it. And no matter how you do it, observing the summer solstice celebrates living in time with the seasons and honoring the cycles that command our natural world, especially on the warmest and sunniest cycle of the year, because kind of the most fun one. Because guess what? In midwinter, you're going to be out there shivering your tail off. Just observing the change in the seasons, man. Feels like Siberia outside. There you go. That's a little bit of the spark-noted history of the summer solstice.
Thank you, Katie. That was fantastic. That was good. That was really interesting. And yeah, it is. That is something, I guess, isn't that interesting where across various cultures, across time, across the world, there's that theme that runs through it.
It's
of like, this is what it's for.
Thread. Isn't that interesting? That about this kind of stuff is the most interesting to me. I'm like, fuck, they never met. Nobody in the Americas at the time, or what would come to be called the Americas, ever went to the Great Wall of China. Nobody ever met. They didn't know each other. It's crazy, dude. It's wild. Blows my teeny tiny little cannabis-fueled mind.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really cool to see the similarities, but also the differences, right? Like how different cultures have taken like certain points or like similar themes, but really created something a little bit different and unique for them too. I think that's really neat.
Yeah. I also didn't realize it was that widespread, and I guess I should have if I had stopped to think about it, but I was like, damn, this is something. It's kind of one of those similar threads that kind of united all of us, and I never really thought about it.
Oh, thank you for bringing the history. That is cool. That is really cool. And yeah, I have, just to let you all know, we have 2 more episodes to finish out our current season, and I'm going to be doing some adventure history for the last 2, just like fun, adventurous kind of stuff. I'm really excited. So you got to make sure that you come back and join us for that. Like, I don't know what Katie's doing yet. We really do surprise each other with these stories.
We really do. We really, it's always like, oh shit, I hope you're not in this time. And it's like, oh, I'm here. It's like, oh, good. We probably won't intersect.
I feel like we've had a few where we've gotten kind of close or like, hey, this is cool because this could associate in some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or in a more direct sort of way. But I can't think of those offhand. Whatever it may be, regardless, it's the looking into history, which just fills my soul. I love it. I love that I get to be here with you doing it, Katie, and with you folks. So thank you so much for joining us today in the Smoke Circle. So make sure that you come back for the last 2 episodes of the season, plus a special guest that I've managed to wrangle, lassoed him in. Boom. Who seems to only come around every Olympics, every Olympic Games. He makes an appearance, which is not very often. So make sure you come back for those last couple of episodes. And also, too, please like, rate, review, subscribe, follow, whatever it might be on the platform in which you're watching or listening to us on. Rating and reviewing is super duper helpful for our little show. So the more ratings that we get, hopefully they're 5-star, and the more ratings that we get, the more that algorithm of the platforms, the podcasting platforms, they go, oh, hey, people like this show. This is a thing that people are listening to, and it helps boost us up. So, like when you open up your Spotify or iTunes or something, there's like a thing like, hey, you might like this podcast. That's what we want to do for other history lovers like yourself. So please do that for us. We would love you forever. And we're also on Patreon at Hightailing Through History. And over there we have the Best Buds Club. And you can, sling us a few bucks, get some extra content and some bonus mini episodes. We've done one recently about lost libraries to history. So we got Alexandria, and then, from antiquities to the present day, we have a bunch of lost knowledge and libraries to go along with some episodes there, amongst other things, and cooking videos and all these sorts of things. So
cooking videos,
yeah, we have some fun in our kitchen too. Historical munchies, That's patreon.com/hightailing through history. All right, so we're going to be back again in a couple of weeks for episode 86. In the meantime, folks, get money, get high, give love, and
listen, there are no accidents in this universe, so you're not an accident. You're important, and we're happy that you're fucking here, dude. Go out and slay the fucking day.
And we'll see you again in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.